there was a little bit of an abrupt end on part one. I'm picking up on part two of our conversation, talking about sensory memory. This is the first of the memory storage areas in this model that we're talking about. Now, I don't want you to really think that there is a box in your head where sensory information is stored. I mean, that's not what we're saying. We're talking about a model. I'm not talking about the actual physiological creations of memory so much as psychologists and educators, we talk about a model. How can we best explain this phenomenon? And sensory store, and you might see some textbooks use that language, is a place where information comes through our senses or internally, but through our senses so that we can do something with it, so that we can interact with our environment. We have some way, and somehow have to hold information in our memory about our environment, either in short term or long term. If we're going to learn and have a long-term relationship with our environment, which most of us have, that information is going to eventually have to go into long-term memory. But sensory memory holds that information very briefly. I'm going to go on to this next slide, and let's talk about some important ideas of sensory memory. You're going to see this slide for every storage component or structure that we talk about. These are the major characteristics. What is its capacity? Does it have unlimited capacity? Probably not. Does it have unlimited duration? How long is information in there? I can tell you that it's very quick, very short, very, 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 very short. How is this information encoded? I'm going to go back to our graph here. How is information encoded in sensory memory? Well, we think that it's encoded in the sense that the information is coming in, so that perceptual information will be stored as an icon, which means visual image. Sounds or auditory information will be stored as echoes or sounds, if you will. Haptic information, our senses, our touch, will be stored in that form. It's encoded that way. Because information is coming in here very, very briefly. And you can see, where is it going to go? This is it's passing through. And as this information comes into our sensory memory, we have to decide if it's important or not. We are all, even you at this moment, everyone is all the time bombarded with information from our environment. And we might be bombarded from internal information as well. My head hurts, or my stomach doesn't feel well. I'm tired. I'm not, but I mean, theoretically speaking, we have internal information, and we also have information from the external world. You hear the sound of my voice. Maybe you hear the sound of your friends or your children in the other room. Maybe the sound of the heater or the air conditioning going, or the TV in another room. All this information from the environment is trying to gain your attention. And because you are in a situation where you are deliberately trying to learn, where do you want your attention to be focused? Probably on what you're learning. So the mechanisms or the process by which the information you're taking in can be moved along this system to working memory, which is where you're going to think about it. This is not where you're thinking about it. This information is coming in like this, and you're going to either deliberately or implicitly going to select in or out information. You have some control over this because you can you can say, I really need to attend to this. And there's an executive part up here that's saying, okay, I'm thinking about how I'm thinking. That's what metacognition is. And I really think this is an important lesson I need to pay attention to. So through perception, through attention, you're paying attention to some of the information that's coming in. And that information that you don't pay attention to is lost. So in a classroom, or even here taking this a course online, you have other information or other sensory information competing for attention. And you have to do some selective attention to try to figure out what is most important, what do I really need to pay attention to, and take that into working memory and so that you think about it. This is not thinking about it over here in sensory memory. This is just a brief store long enough for you to decide whether or not it's important to go on in your to a different part of your memory system. Let me back up here. Here we go. So the duration of time is very short. For images, it's like half a second. So contrary to what it appears to be to us consciously, is we think that we're a tape recorder or we're a video recorder and it's continuous. It's a continuous feed. Well, it's not. It's very short, let's say half a second. So we're actually processing very short frames of information. It has to be able to change because if some information didn't fade away, we'd be seeing the same thing all the time, and we don't. It seems to us that things are passing new continually, and it's really new in terms of every half a second. There's just enough overlap or a delay in this half a second so that it will appear to us to be continuous. It's not really instantaneous because then everything would appear as like little strobe lights, strobe effect. And that's not how we perceive the world. We perceive the world as though it's continuous because our visual information is being held there for half a second. Our echo or the auditory information is being held there longer, 2 seconds maybe. Each textbook says a slightly different amount, but let's go with 2 seconds. This makes sense? How? Or why? Well, for one thing, speech involves multiple processes occurring at the same time. We have to hear, and I'm going to just kind of break it down. We have to hear phonemes. Then we have to put the phonemes together to make not a syllabus. Oh my goodness, I do this every time. Look at this, even the recording, I do this. So let me try to make this clearer. We hear phonemes. We put phonemes together to make a syllable. We put syllables together to make words. And what we know from research is that most people cannot necessarily distinguish a phoneme or a syllable or a word out of context. Therefore, we have to have enough context in which to interpret what the word is and what the word means in that context. So we have to have a slightly longer memory for auditory information in order to make sense of the entire word and the word in the context. You may have experienced this if you pay attention to watching commercials. I know that sometimes I'm not sure what they said because I haven't been paying close enough attention, and they're saying a word out of context and I'm not sure what's going on. So you may notice this, and that's this effect of trying to understand the auditory information that we're hearing. And finally, if you look at this model that I use, if this information is not processed to working memory, again, we lose this information. It can never be retrieved. And so if you're studying and you're turning your attention away, you can never regain what I said again. I may have said something very profound. I say this to my students in class all the time. If your neighbor leans over and starts talking to you about something, you can't regain that. You can never hear what you didn't hear. You can never, that information is lost. Now, the only benefit here about the online learning is that you can go back and replay this tape or video and you're fine. You can capture it again. But in real life, once information is gone, it's gone. So this is the first part of the information processing model, is we're taking in information continually. And we're doing this through selective attention and through perception. We think that it's like a filter. We think this filter is kind of near the end of the sensory memory process, although there is some notion that we're also hearing things that we're not conscious of. So it's called the cocktail party phenomenon. If I happen to be at a cocktail party, which, I don't know about you, but I don't really get the occasion to go to a lot of cocktail parties anymore. I could be talking to you. I'm intent on what you're saying to me. You're intent on what I'm saying to you. We're deep in conversation. And yet, I hear somebody say across the room. And in Dr. Miller's class, now, I'm going to pay attention to that. It's going to get my attention. I wasn't consciously paying attention to this information that somebody was talking about me, but I heard it. Why? Because I'm important to myself. And one of the things that has to do with attention is the importance of the information to the learner, or the hearer, so that even though I wasn't conscious that I was doing so, a little bit of my memory here, sensory memory, was available to listen to somebody talking about my name. So that's one of the aspects of sensory memory. And so think about this in the role of a teacher. Attention is absolutely necessary for your learners to gather the information, and if without that information, there's no more learning that can happen. If it doesn't get in, it doesn't get in. Things that we can do in the environment to increase attention. Personal significance. Somebody says my name, you're going to be paying attention. Or emotion, or I might say, hey, this is going to be on the exam, and the exam's really tough. I'll get your attention. Things that are incongruous. So I might start the lesson with saying, where on the equator does it snow? And you're going to think, oh, well, that doesn't exist. Well, it does. And where is that? Novelty. I might start off with some kind of juxtaposing some ideas. We might start off with differences in size and motion of letters, or sensory information, or some kind of intensity. If you see textbooks, they even do things like use colored pictures and boldface and underline words. It's that kind of thing. Pay attention to this. This is important.